Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today we have another article from Bounding Into Comics for anyone that might still have some interest in the MCU, specifically Sony's Spider-Man within the MCU. You might actually be intrigued by this current rumor. And as always, I always will point out and say that this is indeed a rumor and that it is nothing more than that to this point. That apparently She-Hulk will finally make an appearance in the MCU, and it is expected to happen within Spider-Man 3. Now, I would say the biggest news from all of this is the fact that we're even talking about a Spider-Man 3, seeing that there has not up to this point been an official extension on the contract between Sony and Marvel. Now, I assume that it will happen because I'm sure Sony is looking at the fact that it has a top 5 highest grossing film of the year and looking at the fact that they are making bank off of this deal, and it does nothing but benefit them because they're able to borrow not only Spider-Man, or rather use Spider-Man, which they own, but also have the ability to borrow other characters from the Disney MCU universe to be able to create these films. I think that they would be silly not to re-up that contract, but that, of course, is my just humble opinion. But the new rumor suggests She-Hulk, aka Jennifer Walters, will appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, in the next Spider-Man film. This is someone who, as a person that's not a comic book fan, doesn't really have a lot of comic book knowledge, have heard a lot of really interesting things about She-Hulk. I've heard great things about her. I know that Gary Nadrotic loves She-Hulk, has a lot of love for the character, so that actually has me kind of excited for it. And based on the actual explanation here given in Abounding in the Comics, it seems like it might be a good point. And of course, spoiler warning for anyone that has not seen Far From Home, but also does not want to know what the apparent plans for this character are going to be in the near future. The rumor, of course, comes from TVO, from the Lords of the Long Box who appeared on Gem Mint Collectibles livestream. TVO states definitively that She-Hulk will appear in the MCU. Now, take that with a grain of salt. I don't know that organization, so I cannot speak to the validity of it, but it seems to make sense based on what happens in Spider-Man Far From Home. So he reveals what Marvel Studios and Sony were planning to introduce Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, into the MCU to act as Spider-Man's lawyer. Spider-Man needs a lawyer because Jake Gyllenhaal's Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, leaks a doctored video to J. Jonah Jameson, who accuses Spider-Man of murdering him. So that was, of course, one of the end tags, was J. Jonah Jameson being revealed back as a character being played by the truly amazing J.K. Simmons, and it was great to see his character back again. But it does also make a lot of sense that at the beginning of the next film, he probably will either be on the run or will be in court. And I think that it could actually be kind of interesting to see that court dynamic. And it's really sad that we will not get Matt Murdock as Daredevil, or as at least his lawyer to introduce Daredevil, because of the deal that was made with Netflix, which is what they go over here, saying, however, Daredevil is not able to introduce MCU because of an alleged deal that Marvel Studios has with Netflix. It is interesting to me that Disney-run Marvel and Disney-run Star Wars have both made some incredibly terrible deals in their tenure, seeing that you have Bob Iger, who from the very beginning has wanted to do a Disney streaming service, and yet he is the one that was behind, or at least allowed, certain deals to be made to the point where they can't show certain Star Wars films on their streaming service because of deals that were made at the very beginning of the time they bought Star Wars, and also, of course, with deals they made with Netflix with some of those characters. Because I can tell you this much, if you want to get me in the theater to actually go see another Spider-Man film, not only do you need to make it a great story, but also to bring in Matt Murdock, to bring in Daredevil into the universe, that could be one way to do it. Now, it might be enough to do what they are going to bring as an alternative idea into play because of how it plays out. Because Daredevil is not able to be introduced into the MCU due to the legal, to the overall deal, because of Netflix, the characters that would include there, of course, would be Luke Cage, Iron Fist, etc. However, because of that being the reason, TVO states they are going to be using She-Hulk as his lawyer. He confirms that Spider-Man's lawyer, saying, yeah, Jennifer Walters is a lawyer. That's why the second most famous lawyer in the MCU is Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk. I don't know if she's going to be Hulked out yet, but it's definitely going to be Jennifer Walters and eventually become She-Hulk. That's a great book to have. That's the last big Stan Lee original story, if you think about it. So actually, that would be a very interesting end note to it, especially with the recent passing of Stan Lee, to have another Spider-Man film, especially since Spider-Man was, I think most would consider to be one of his best stories. That I think, of course, many of these things are up for debate, but having this be in a Spider-Man film, I think would be very appropriate to it. But also, of course, having Stan Lee's She-Hulk film, or rather She-Hulk story arc being brought in could also be a part of it as well. So this might be another way in which they're able to not only introduce a new character in She-Hulk, but also be able to tell an interesting story of how how Spider-Man, how Peter Parker has to deal with a world where everyone knows who he is, which to me obviously creates a lot of problems when you look at the comics, when you look at how the entire movie of Far From Home took place outside of New York, which I know troubled a lot of people. And again, this is coming from someone that's not a comic book person. It seems to me that adding in a character like She-Hulk could be interesting. Now, what I am not sure of is the fact that Universal has certain rights to certain characters like Hulk, which is the reason why you've not seen an individual Hulk film since Disney took over Marvel, because of these contract deals. So I'm assuming that She-Hulk, therefore, would not be a part of that deal. I don't think She-Hulk ever makes an appearance in any of the Universal parks, for example, so I think they should be fine there. But it does indeed raise an interesting point with these new characters being brought in, and also, of course, makes us ask the question, who will it be? So, with this news, are any of you interested in Spider-Man 3? Does this seem like an interesting storyline? I honestly think, objectively speaking, it does sound pretty interesting to me. Is that going to be enough to get me back on Disney's bandwagon? Hell no. Is that going to get me back into the theater to support this film necessarily? Not necessarily. But that being said, I think that having She-Hulk being brought in and everything that I've heard about She-Hulk to this point has been nothing but positive. Gary talks about the character a lot and loves the character, so I would love to hear his thoughts on this, because we all know that he loves Bound in Comics just like I do, so I'm sure he'll be talking about this news, or I hope he'll be talking about this news in the near future. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think that She-Hulk being introduced as Spider-Man's lawyer in Spider-Man 3 would be a great way to introduce her character into the universe? Obviously, it's not very common that we have big characters being introduced into the Spider-Man portion of the MCU because of that Sony deal. But also, do you think it's interesting that these rumors are coming out before we have on paper an official deal between Sony and Disney? Do you think that deal is going to be extended? And also, how long do you think that deal is going to be? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this video, smash that like button, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.